I was really not able to read or write until I was in 5th grade. In fact, I could not spell my full name, Daniel, until 5th grade. I could spell Dan. For all practical purposes, could not read or write until 5th grade when I had a teacher, Mrs. Shirley Gott. Just an absolute blessed teacher filled with love and kindness and a belief that all children can learn and all children deserve the opportunity to learn.
I'm Nicole Holcomb, attorney by day and podcaster by night, a former educator, school counselor, and administrator, and mom to a 9-year-old daughter with dyslexia, who loves all things Harry Potter, Minecraft, and science. A few years ago, she was identified with dyslexia, and our life seemed to turn upside down for a while, quite literally. I created the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast to help you navigate the upside down journey of dyslexia. You got this. If you're wanting to thrive as a mom in this dyslexia journey, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. You are listening to the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast, episode 20 with Dr. Daniel Franklin. Be sure to visit dyslexiamomlife.com/20 to get a copy of today's show notes. In the show notes, you'll be able to find how to connect with Dr. Franklin, get a copy of his book, and also find all the resources that we shared with you today. All right. We're here today with Dr. Franklin, and I'm so excited to have him on the show today. And I know you are going to find the information he shares with us today to be so valuable. He is the author of Helping Your Child with Language-Based Learning Disabilities, and I highly recommend picking up a copy. I have to say, Dr. Franklin, when I reached out to you, it is one of the best books I've read, and I've read several on dyslexia because you really do break things down and make them manageable, and just you provide a wonderful strategies. And so I want to start off by saying thank you because it's been very valuable to our family.
My pleasure, and it's wonderful to be here with you, Nicole. I'm so excited to be speaking with you, especially this month, which is Dyslexia Awareness Month. Such an important thing to be thinking about and paying attention to.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind if you just introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself with the audience before we get started today.
I'll be delighted to. My name is Dr. Daniel Franklin, and I am the founder, president, and clinical director of Franklin Educational Services. It is a company based in Los Angeles, California, serving all of Los Angeles, California, and Orange County. We provide a very broad range of education support services, everything from tutoring to fully accredited one-on-one homeschooling, test prep. We provide school shadows. We provide a very, very broad range of educational support services, not just for kids with a wide range of learning and behavioral differences, but for all students. We have students of every shape and size with every type of need imaginable. And we work with students not just K through high school, but in college as well. I do a lot of presenting. I run a lot of training workshops. And as Nicole pointed out, I'm the author of a book, Helping Your Child with Language-Based Learning Disabilities, published by New Harbinger Publications in 2018. It's widely available on Amazon. And I wrote the book in a sense, Nicole, I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you. When I was asked to write the book by New Harbinger, I began to wonder, well, how am I going to do this? And I just thought about writing a personal letter to a parent of a child who's struggling at school. And that's really what my book is about. And that was the spirit of its authorship.
I love that. Yeah. And, now that you say that, I can see that in the book as far as the way it's laid out and the way it flows. Makes perfect sense that you were having a conversation with someone. And that came across that way too. So that's great. I think that also is what makes you're so different from others, because so many are very scientific in nature. And although there may be pieces that parents need to know, I just find yours to be very practical, get down to business. What do I need to do? So I really appreciate that as well. And if you don't mind, I know you have what brought you to this work? I mean, why are you working with students with language-based learning, differences or disabilities?
Sure. Well, I'm a career educator. I started my career in education over 30 years ago as a classroom teacher, working primarily with children with learning and behavioral differences, primarily dyslexia, but other learning and behavioral differences too. I had a very keen interest in this field because I am myself dyslexic. Indeed, I would say very dyslexic. You know, we come in various grades of dyslexia here, from a little bit dyslexic to very dyslexic. I was really not able to read or write until I was in 5th grade. In fact, I could not spell my full name, Daniel, until 5th grade. I could spell Dan, but I really, for all practical purposes, could not read or write until 5th grade, when I had an amazing teacher, Mrs. Shirley Gott, who is the subject of a short documentary called Unteachable by the acclaimed filmmaker Anthony Sharon. And this short documentary is really about this amazing teacher, just an absolute blessed teacher filled with love and kindness and a belief that all children can learn and all children deserve the opportunity to learn. And it wasn't until I was in her class that I felt safe and I felt comfortable. And I felt no matter how much I struggled, she was going to stick with me and help me out and make learning fun and safe and lovely. And it was that experience that really got the wheels turning even as a child, thinking, wow, this amazing teacher, I wonder if I could ever be a teacher like that someday too. And Nicole, that thought was in my mind all the way through junior high school and high school and into college. And I remained very close friends with this particular teacher throughout her entire life. She lived to the age of 98, and she and I remained in touch throughout her entire life. And once I had completed college, I began to realize I had this opportunity to teach at a school specifically for children with dyslexia. And that started a career in education, and I've never looked back.
Wonderful. You know, it is so true. Just, you know, one adult, one teacher, someone really can light a spark, even just so early, you know, so that's wonderful. For those that are listening, you know, some people, I had a conversation with a parent not too long ago, and she's like, I didn't even know some of these other things existed. You know, I've just heard of dyslexia. You know, I'm curious to ask you about, you know, the title of your book actually says Language-Based Learning Disabilities. And you do reference at the bottom that there's strategies to succeed in school and life. And then you go on to list dyslexia, dysgraphia, you know, ADHD, things of that nature. But why did you choose the language-based learning disabilities? Or can you maybe share a little bit about that with the audience, what you mean when you say that before we get started, so that way they're all understanding, you know, what you mean by that when you talk about that particular terminology?
Sure, great question too. You know, when I was approached by New Harbinger Publications to write this book, they felt that just dyslexia was going to be too narrow. They felt that there's a big demand also for, because increasingly people just don't, dyslexia 15, 20 years ago meant any challenge with written language or things related to written language like mathematics. But increasingly people began to use not just dyslexia, but dysgraphia for the writing element of dyslexia, or dyscalculia for the dyslexia version of challenges with mathematics. What we also know is a very large proportion of the children, teens, and young adults with dyslexia and dysgraphia and dyscalculia, a large proportion are often identified as having ADHD as well. And when we have kids with dyslexia or ADHD, invariably these are kids who also have processing challenges. They're having a difficult time processing visual information, processing auditory information. We're not talking about visual acuity like sharp eyesight or good hearing. We're really talking about how well does this child manage information that they're hearing, or how well does this child manage information they're seeing, not just written words, but looking at a map or making sense of a diagram or a graph or some other visual representation of information. So as the publisher began to consider all the many different areas where a parent could encounter challenges helping their child manage the demands of school, they asked me to come up with a more general construct. And fortunately, in the past 10 or 15 years or so, the term language-based learning disabilities is being used widely now by many educators and clinicians, such as myself, to describe a very broad range of kids. So if you have a child with dyslexia, you're going to probably see some ADHD-like characteristics and vice versa. If you have a child with ADHD, you will see some challenges with reading. It may not be with word recognition so much as comprehension or written language skills such as writing and so forth. So language-based learning disabilities is a big umbrella term or construct that covers a very broad range of kids with these unique learning needs.
Yes, thank you for that. And I think, too, it's a little bit easier for parents to digest because dyslexia, it sounds so clinical. It sounds so scary for many families. So I think to think of a language-based learning disability, it seems a little bit more digestible, I would think, for some families as well, it really just spells out what it means, right? So that really helps them a lot as well. And you mentioned ADHD, and this was something I was going to ask you after this, because I feel like this goes together just kind of to get us started so people can make sense out of our conversation. But one of the things you talk about is co-occurrences in the book. And I know from our experience, that happened very quickly for us. And I remember a teacher saying to me, it's like peeling an onion. You're going to keep peeling layers back and layers back. And I said to her jokingly, I said, I love that you called it peeling the onion because I'm in my closet crying. And so an onion makes sense to me. But I know that you talk about that too, as far as I know, different terminology for it. But could you share a little bit about what co-occurrence means? And does that happen often? Because I believe as a parent coming into this world, they may not realize that it's not usually just dyslexia by itself, right? There's other things that happen.
There sure are. And if we get too tunnel vision on just one aspect, we're going to probably miss some other important considerations too. So we really want to be thinking more holistically, more generally, as we look at how we're going to understand and support children who are struggling at school. Increasingly, we also see a lot of children with autism sharing a lot of these similarities too. And indeed, I work, quite a few of the children in my practice are children with autism. It's a group of children I especially enjoy working with. And so we want to take into account that we're looking at a very global set of learning and behavioral differences, really. I prefer the word difference as opposed to disability. Of course, the publisher wanted the word disability because it's more searchable when someone's looking for a book related to the topic I was writing on. But I think really in terms of learning differences, I think in terms of celebrating differences, embracing diversity, thinking increasingly we're using the term neurodiversity to describe people who are just neurologically different, think differently, approach problem solving differently. And the more we can accept and embrace and celebrate these marvelous differences that exist between us, the more we're able to help one another, but especially help those special kids who want to learn, can learn, enjoy learning, but are struggling at school or with certain conventional aspects of learning.
Right, absolutely. So another thing that really, I know people listening are going to be like, all she's going to talk about is the book, and they're pretty much right. So one of the things I really enjoyed about your book that I felt like really stood out differently than others, and I really want you to spend a little bit of time talking about this, is that you encouraged families to really think about this through a relationship-based approach. And so my background is in education as well. I'm a former school counselor before I went to law school. And so a lot of that I really relate to, right? Like I really just connected with those chapters and really the whole book where you talk about relationship-based approach, because I think a lot of times as we go into this, sometimes it may be many years of failures before we're able to get help for our children, and we feel so defeated. And so I love that approach. So could you share that with us, a little bit more information about that and get them familiar with that? Because I do believe it's a wonderful approach for families to be taking.
When I started teaching, I discovered, and bear in mind, I started teaching at a school for children with language-based learning disabilities. And when I began teaching, I found that these children often were insecure, had a lot of anxiety, often felt like they weren't good learners. And I found that if I really focused on trying to get to know them, make them feel comfortable around me, let them know that I really cared about them, that I really believed in them, and that I was really excited to have this opportunity to be their teacher, they responded in kind, and they felt like, I'm excited to be your student, and let's see how we can work together to learn, learn skills, manage the demands of your class, in this case, my class, and so forth. And from that experience, I began thinking more and more about how successful we can be as teachers, and parents, and clinicians too, if we really focus on the quality of the relationship we have. In the context of a healthy, positive relationship, kids can really excel. And we actually even know from evidence that children who are in healthy, positive relationships, and a term that's frequently used is secure attachment. That means the internal model the child has of a relationship is one that allows them to think in terms of being connected or attached to the adults around them. And if that attachment is healthy and positive and reciprocal, those children tend to develop a wide range of capacities like executive functioning skills better and more quickly than children who don't have secure attachments, children who don't have the benefit of healthy, positive relationships. So when we focus on the quality of the relationship first, all the other things seem to come quite easily. But if we start focusing on the needs or the weaknesses first, and we forsake the relationship, sometimes it'll be a while, or it can be challenging to begin to make the kind of progress we otherwise might be making.
And you talk about too the mindful awareness, and I think that's such an important part of parenting.
Sure. Kids are exquisitely sensitive to the emotional state of the adults around them. I don't even know how they do it, but kids seem to know when a parent or a teacher or an adult is happy or sad or angry or in a good mood. And when we as adults, whether we're a teacher or a parent or a clinician or a school administrator, when we can find a way to get into a calm, regulated state, to get into a state of peacefulness, when we can be in a place where we're thinking very broadly about the world around us and about the things in the world and beyond that are meaningful to us, and the things that warm our heart and feed our soul. And when we can embrace these critical things that are so important to being connected to the world at large, when we can be in that place, children somehow know we're there. And children feel comfortable and safe with individuals who have taken the time and sometimes a few deep breaths just to get into a nice, calm state, and being aware that being patient first with ourselves. Adults must always find a way to be patient with themselves and one another. And the more we're patient with ourselves as adults and patient with one another as adults, children see that patience and they become patient themselves and with circumstances around them, even if those circumstances are challenging. So that is the awareness, the mindful awareness. That's part of the mindful awareness things that we can do. Mindful awareness isn't fancy science, and it's really easy and accessible. You don't have to read a book to be really good at mindful awareness. It's just doing those little things you do to take good care of your heart and your soul and your spirit. Because when we do those things, we have much more to offer those around us.
Right. And I know too, from working in school systems prior to my current job, we all bring in when we get defeated feeling with our children, and we feel like maybe the school is, many parents would say, I feel like the school is against me. I feel like they don't like my child. And, a lot of times would come in very upset and very high emotions, which I can only imagine. how they felt. But on the other end, I do believe, as far as you talk a little bit about this too, about school relationships, because your child sees you, right? And so a lot of times I worried when the parent would go home, and then how could we not be surprised when the child came back to school and was disrespectful and didn't want to try? You're just going to fail me anyway. And so I really share, with the moms I work with, how important it is that you also build relationships with your schools. And it's not perfect, it's not. We've all had teachers that were not a good situation, even personally. But again, going back to relationships, and you gave a beautiful example earlier. It wasn't until fifth grade that you had that, but what an impact that made. But I think my point is, as parents, we contribute to that too, and we have to be mindful to how we respond when our children are watching, and how we too go out of our way to try to build those relationships. And sometimes that's not easy.
It's not easy. And remember, a child who is struggling is also a child who's experiencing some pain. And when anyone is in pain, they can react in ways that may not be optimal. And so when we look at child behavior that isn't quite what we might want it to be, if we can remember that there's probably some pain there too. Someone once said to me, to get a good sense of and a level of sensitivity of the children in the classroom, imagine a pool of tears around each child. There are feelings there, and there is a sense of hurt and injury frequently. Obviously not in every child, but certainly children who've been struggling and for a long time. And if we can think about how we reach out to those who are hurt, what do? We're calm, we're patient, we're understanding, we're empathic, we provide time, and we don't demand more than they're capable of delivering. And in a similar vein, when a teacher or a school administrator is not having the success they want with a student, they're often in a challenged place too. And so when we're interacting with teachers and school administrators about an issue concerning a child who's struggling at school, again, a few deep breaths go a long way, and being willing to hear somebody out and process what they're saying, and giving a few moments of thought before we respond is often the difference between a good outcome and a bad outcome in some of those interactions.
Right. And too, like I said, I used to be a school counselor. And so I would always try to, for both parties, start those conversations of, we're here for the best interest of the student. And if we can all keep focus on the best interest of the student, we might not agree how to get there, but I think many times it's just, both parties having some conversation. So it just, again, going back to the relationships piece, I just think it's so important to be mindful about those pieces. Another aspect that you talk about, and I'm sure you talk about this a lot with families in your practice, is around not only that relationship, but how do I as a mom keep that relationship at the same time we have the clash of, I've been at school all day. Now I've come home and I've had a minute to breathe as the child. And now mom wants me to do homework. And now I've got all this on top of that. And it seems very overwhelming. And there's lots of emotions. And, many times teachers say, I don't see that at school, because they're just so exhausted by the time they get home. They've worked so hard during the day. So what advice or strategies do you have for families? I know you talk about that relationship is so important, but how do we also, there's skills we have to work on with them. So what advice do you give to us that are in the middle of this?
Well, Nicole, you really raised such an important point. While a child is at school, they can hold it together. It's not always easy, but they can typically hold it together, frequently can. And then when they get home is when it all comes out. And so sometimes parents see what the level of struggle and challenge really is once their child gets home. Children who have healthy, positive relationships with the adults in their lives, their parents, teachers, other coaches, children who have healthy, positive relationships tend to be very resilient in the long run, tend to do well in life in the long run. So as it turns out, it's really the quality of the personal relationships that children have with the adults around them that is a much more important variable in success in life than having high levels of academic achievement. You can have individuals who achieve at a very high level academically, but if they don't have healthy, positive relationships with the adults and people in their lives, they tend to struggle and in many instances not do well in life. So we really want to focus on the quality of the relationship. If a child comes home and they are in deep distress and doing more of something that wasn't fun to do in the first place or wasn't rewarding to do or made them feel bad about themselves because they weren't good at it, doing more of that thing at home isn't really going to be helpful. What is going to be helpful is for that child to say, oh, wow, I'm home with mom. She loves me. She understands that I've had a stressful day. She's being patient with me. Or, well, wow, dad understands that I really need to be doing something fun, to be playing a game or be outside or helping with a chore. There's a lot of kids who are really happy helping with chores around the household or the farm or anywhere else. And that is often is a more meaningful and productive experience than doing homework because they're doing something that they enjoy, that is fulfilling, they're contributing to the family, they're learning a skill, and they're in a calm, regulated state. Children who are under stress have a stress hormone called cortisol at an elevated level. And cortisol is good in small doses when we really need to focus on something and work hard and get something done. But cortisol, for long periods of time at high levels, actually damages the brain, actually withers the neurons in the hippocampus, the region of the brain that's responsible for learning and memory. It withers the neurons in the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain that's responsible for emotional regulation, for focus, for organization, time management, and problem solving. So we really need to think about all the things we can do to reduce stress level in children and keep that cortisol level low and only allow it to rise when we really need it for that burst of focused work.
Right, absolutely. Another piece that I thought was, I love that for those listening, some books don't go through the whole process. And, you really do. You start off early and you go through elementary, middle, high school, and as adults, what we can do to make sure our children are successful. So I can tell that you were having a conversation with one of us. And so that was great. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, and my daughter's 9, so I even think about her as early as 9, is, how do we help our children develop a positive mindset?
So a positive mindset, which is so critical in all areas of learning and development, a positive mindset starts first from the adults around the child having a positive mindset. So it's going to be really hard for a child to develop a positive mindset if the adults, the parents, the grown-ups, the teachers, coaches, school administrators need a positive mindset. They need to be thinking glass half full as opposed to glass half empty. They need to be thinking in terms of, I know it's challenging, but if we work together, we're going to be able to manage these demands and be successful. Positive mindset also comes from providing children with challenges that they can be successful with. So we want to make sure when we're asking something of a child that we make sure what we're asking them to do is within their capacities. And if it's not, we want to offer as much support as that child needs to be successful with that task. I'm often asked about helicopter parents. And I always say the difference between a helicopter parent and a helpful parent is this. A helicopter parent provides help that's not needed. A helpful parent provides help that is needed. And children with language-based learning disabilities like dyslexia and ADHD need a lot of help. Let's not pathologize the need for help. Let's not make a child feel ashamed when they need help. And let's not make a parent feel that they're doing something wrong when they're offering the help their child needs. And bear in mind, if anything, kids are consistently inconsistent. They may be able to do one thing one day, and the very next day, they might not be able to do that same thing. We don't really want to draw attention to inconsistencies because kids don't have a lot of control over inconsistency. That comes with brain development later in life. What we want to do is evaluate what kind of help a child needs at any given moment and simply provide that help when they need it. It's good to say, hey, I'm helping you do this, or do you see how I'm going about organizing your papers or your book bag, or how I'm opening up your math book to the page we need to be on, and I'm pointing to the problem we need to be working on. Providing high levels of proactive support, just like that, helps kids feel safe, help them realize that when a demand is going to be above what they might be capable of that moment, mom or dad or this teacher or tutor or whoever it is going to be there to help.
Right. And I love that you said the inconsistency pieces, because it is. I mean, it's from day to day can be completely different. And I think it's important for people. And I mean, we're still learning that, right? And I think it's important for families to realize that is part of this and that is okay. And I think you even said before that it's, every day does look different. And today there may be more support needed than yesterday. And it's funny you say helicopter parents, because I think the same thing, because we had our daughter later in life, and I'm trying to balance giving her a sense of independence at the same time giving her the support she needs so she can be successful. And that's a hard balance some days. But I do like and appreciate that one of the things that you encourage parents is it is okay to support. You should be supporting.
Yes. And it's important to realize it's not just the big things, it's the little things too. It's being there to help organize book bags and binders and study areas and create a time management system. And school isn't something a child does. School is something a family does. And the more managing the demands of school and learning is a family community effort, the more involved the child will feel, the more committed to it they will feel. And they won't feel alone with it. They'll feel this is what we do as a family. And this motivates children to apply themselves more, to be excited about it, and to realize that they have an important role in the family cause of going to school, managing the demands of school, of learning, acquiring skills, and participating in our learning communities.
Right. And, I think even though we just went or are still going through in many aspects a pandemic, that really to me was one of the positives that came out. Families went back to sitting around the kitchen table together, really seeing what their child was struggling with, because we really had no other choice, really. We were there right beside them, helping them. And it just hit me when you said that, because it really, the whole family was together. You had to figure out schedules. You had to figure out, how do we make this work? You had to really be in tune with your child all day long to make that successful for them. And just like with teachers, there were some days that were good and some days that were bad. But I think you even said early on, sometimes we just have to remember to breathe, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Deep breaths when we need them.
Yeah, our mental health is the priority. And not just ours as adults, but the mental health of children is the priority. If we can preserve the mental health of ourselves and of the children around us, we can continue to foster a healthy, positive, constructive community. And so we really do want to prioritize mental health. If a child is not in a good mental state, they actually can't learn. Not a lot of good learning comes from a child who's dysregulated, who's depressed, sad, angry. And so we really, all we have to do is think about ourselves. Generally speaking, we do our best work when we're feeling pretty good about ourselves and feeling pretty good about what it is we're doing. And so the more we can create scenarios, situations whereby children feel good about themselves, feel good about what they're doing, know that they can get the help they need when they need it, and that we're not going to make them feel ashamed for the things that they can't do, but we're going to make them feel proud for the things that they can do, then we're going to have kids who are really learning, acquiring skills, mastering content, and ultimately getting good grades and doing well at school.
Right. Exactly. So you probably have already said, I mean, I can think of several examples of things that you've already shared with us, but is there anything specific as, you know, those of us that are starting out on this journey and have only a few years in, or maybe a few weeks in to this journey, you know, going through all these pieces of it and challenges and gifts along the way, is there any advice you would give to a mom who, let's say a mom who's just starting this journey, what advice would you give to her?
You know, I've noticed among moms and dads and parents everywhere, they know what it feels like to feel good as a parent. They know what a good moment is with their child. They may not be able to put words to it, but their heart tells them, oh, this feels good. This is fun. This is how I like it to be. This is good. If you trust those instincts, the instincts that inform you that this is fun, this is good, this is positive, you are doing the best thing you possibly can to your child. If you're saying to yourself, oh no, I'm not enjoying this, this isn't very pleasant, I hope this doesn't go on too much longer, we need to sort of hit the pause button and say, what do I need to do to get back to that place where it was enjoyable and it did feel right and things were good? My child was happy. I was happy. Our family was happy, because we know that in those moments of happiness, there is connection. And in connection, there's a type of brain development, and the social brain is developing wiring for positive, healthy social interaction. And above all, humans are social creatures. Indeed, the human brain is a social organ. It only develops well in the context of healthy relationships. And the more we honor our social nature, the more we recognize that children, above all, are social creatures and need to be interacting socially. This is why we need to look carefully at what goes on at schools. Are children feeling connected and together, or are they feeling driven apart and separate? Because it's feeling together and connected that is really allowing their brains to develop in an optimal way. And in those moments of separation and disconnection, it creates underlying feelings of anxiety, of doubt, of insecurity, and displeasure with the experience. So we really want to focus on the things that we know are critical to healthy brain growth and development.
Thank you so much. How can people best connect with you? Is there a particular location or best way to follow you or get connected with you in your work?
Well, I always say, if you want to speak to me, pick up the phone and call me. My phone number is 310-571-1176. And if you call and I can't come to the phone, I promise I will call you back. You can also connect with me at my book website at danielfranklinphd.com. It's all one, danielfranklinphd.com. And I have a website for my educational service company, Franklin Educational Services, and it's Franklin ED, Edward Delta, ED. So franklined.com. I'm really easy to reach. I hope your listeners will reach out to me. I look forward to hearing from them, and I promise I will get back in touch if I miss you the first time you call.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Franklin. It's been a privilege and an honor to talk to you and get to know you. And I appreciate you sharing all your wisdom with our listeners, especially during Dyslexia Awareness Month. So we do appreciate that as well.
Well, I send my very best wishes to all of your listeners and to children and families everywhere.
Thank you. Thanks for listening today. For Dyslexia Awareness Month, I have a few things just for you. This week, I'm going to be giving away 2 copies of Dr. Franklin's book, Helping Your Child with Language-Based Learning Disabilities. You can get an entry for rating and reviewing the podcast at Apple Podcast, and an entry for sharing your favorite episode, that's a Dyslexia Mom Life episode, with a friend or on social. That's 2 chances to win a book this week. For details of the giveaway, go to my show notes for today's episode at dyslexiamomlife.com. But that's not it. I've also created a free resource article for you on the website that lists all free resources that I've found so far this month, and it includes free apps for Nessie. It also includes some Microsoft Dyslexia Decoded training that they're having. There's a virtual event hosted by Nashville Dyslexia Center and the Brentwood Library that's virtual. And I'll continue to update that article all month as I find things. That way you can go to one place to find what's going on this month during Dyslexia Awareness Month. So go there and check that out, and I will continue to add things to there for you. But that's not all. I also have a private Facebook group. It's Dyslexia Mom Life Podcast Community, and I would love to invite you to come into that group. This month, for Dyslexia Awareness Month, I'm going to be showing up every day live in that Facebook group. So I look forward to connecting with you there. And then I've also created a VIP resource library. So that's going to be a free offer for you to sign up to have free access to the VIP resource library. And again, that's at dyslexiamomlife.com. So think checklists, cheat sheets, planners, everything you need all in one place. I will also continue to add resources to that library and update you on that as well. And as a bonus, you will also receive my weekly emails. Now remember, you got this. So until next Monday, see you then and have a great week.